to PublisHer Unmasked, a series of virtual conversations with inspiring and influential bookwomen from around the world. As you'll know, PublisHer is a worldwide community of female publishing leaders, and we're working to tackle the publishing industry's entrenched gender imbalances, particularly pronounced at the executive level. Since September, PublisHer Unmasked has been moving around the world, one region at a time, and it's my pleasure to be interviewing bookwomen from Europe. If you subscribe to the PublisHer YouTube channel, you're able to watch a new edition of Unmasked every week. My name's Jo Henry. I'm Managing Director of Book Brunch, the online trade magazine for the book industry operating out of the UK. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking to Sophie de Closets, the CEO of Fayard Publishers in France, part of the Hachette Group. Good morning, Sophie. It's really lovely to see you, and I'm delighted you can be here with us today. Now, Fayard is obviously a highly respected publisher, very historic publisher, many best-selling authors, not least Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as well.
Yes.
So I thought I'd start by asking you to give us a little background, both to the company and how you came to join Fayard. If you could just fill us in on the background.
Yes, sure. So Fayard, as you said, was founded in 1857. So it's a very old company, one of the biggest in trade of Hachette in France. And actually, I started as an intern at Fayard in 2003. And then was hired in 2004 as an assistant. And then somehow I climbed up the stairs and was an assistant and then an editorial assistant. Then I was asked to do marketing and then PR. And then I started to propose my own books. And 1 year after all, I became editorial director. And it was at a time when Hachette wanted to merge Fayard and another publishing company of Hachette, which is Grasset. And so the Claude Durand, who was the legend in French publishing and who ruled over Fayard for 40 years, stepped back. And Olivier Nora, who was the CEO of Grasset, started to be the CEO of both companies. And he decided it was not a good idea to merge them because it would harm the companies and not be great for the books and the authors and what we are meant to do. And so he decided to go back to Grasset, and they were looking for a CEO at the time for Fayard. So he asked me if I would consider being the publisher of Fayard. And I thought at that time that was really such a bad idea because I was 35. I didn't have any experience in executive position. I was pregnant with my second son. And I really thought that it was not respectful towards Fayard as an institution. I said, I love that company. I love the author. I love the list. And I thought, my God, they're really to give it to anyone. And it's crazy. So I said no 3 times. And then I said, okay, just forget about it. And I said, just find me. And I remember saying now, I'm so ashamed, but I think it's typical. I said at some point, just find a 60-year-old white male who will do the job for like 5 to 6 years. And when I'm ready, I have so much to learn. Maybe I'll be able to do it. But right now it's madness. And so I gave birth to my second son. And then Arnaud Nourry, the CEO of Hachette, said, I want to see you like 3 weeks afterwards and he didn't ask me, he said, I'm appointing you publisher of Fayard. And I said, oh my God. And my first reaction was, are you really sure it's a good idea? He said, yes, I'm sure. And he was so sure, and he's a great CEO. So I thought, well, I will maybe at last stop and convincing him that this is such a bad idea. And so it started that way.
And that was what, about 4 years ago now, is it?
6 years ago.
6 years ago now.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like having been forced into this position, did you feel you had a lot to learn, or actually when you got there, did you think, do you know what, I can do this?
Well, actually, it took me some time, but I think it's the same whenever you change position, just to understand what is really expected from you, what you should stop doing and what you should start doing, and on what you should focus on. And to give you one example, my fear was that I was not very, very good with numbers, to understate it. And so I really thought I had to improve my knowledge of all the numbers and the, this weird language with, signs and stuff and Excel stuff. And at some point I spent a lot of time. And I remember one day where I spent 10 hours in meetings about, I don't know, ebook retail prices and stock and numbers and think about process. And at the end of the day, there were 3 things that I didn't do, which were to call back 3 of Fayard's main authors. And suddenly it was a shock. I said, well, this is the only thing that I should have done. This is the only thing that really matters, because what bring wealth, the numbers are only there because it's the numbers of the sales and of the books of the text that the author gave us. So the real wealth of a publishing house is only text and authors. And so my job is to keep everybody focused on the book and the authors. And if you haven't done anything in one day that has helped somehow directly an author or a text, then the day is missed. But it took me like a few weeks to understand that, which sounds so obvious.
Well, not at all obvious. And so it'd be quite interesting just to talk a little bit about how the company was when you were put into position, or when you came into position, and what you kind of perceived as what you'd like to achieve over your tenure as CEO. I mean, what changes have you made, and what more do you need to do?
Actually, what the company was published more than 300 books per year. We had Fayard and 2 imprints, including a mass paperback for nonfiction. And the company was a lot about domestic nonfiction, and the range of the book that we used to publish was not so wide. And so I decided that I needed to build a budget with authors that would come back every year and that were strong enough for us to keep on publishing academic books or keep on publishing young authors in fiction. And the fun I have, it's very selfish, but my fun is to have very, very different kind of books and authors. So I wanted to open the range of books. And the second thing was that I thought it was madness to publish so many books. We are only 42, and we're still 42. And I thought that it needed so much energy and time and commitment to make a book work that we couldn't, split that in 300 shares. I mean, it was crazy. So 6 years later, we have 5 imprints. Because there is one imprint that we sort of reignite, which is called Mazarine, which publishes more commercial women's fiction, foreign and domestic, and which has been hugely successful. And we publish less than 200 titles per year. So, and we have been very, very profitable. I mean, it turned out to be a good strategy, but we were lucky. And then the team we had, when I came in, there were only 2 people in the sales and marketing department. Now there's 6. There were only 4 people in the PR department. Now there's 7. And so, the balance of the company had to be rich between editorial and people who make those books known to the public.
So if you've kept the same number of staff and you now have more in PR and marketing and sales, where did you cut the people from?
Actually, I cut some people from editorial, but I didn't have to cut that much, because actually there were a few people who were not very happy with me being appointed CEO, so they left.
Okay. So it was quite a useful way to clear out some opposition.
Exactly. And then there were some people who retired. So it was a pretty smooth shift, which was lucky.
And which editorial route had you been involved in before? Which part of the company had you been most?
I'm a nonfiction editor.
A nonfiction editor.
Yeah.
And do you still retain any authors that you work with?
Or? Oh yeah, a lot. Too many.
Do you?
Too many. I can't let go.
Okay.
No, I have a lot of I have a hard time to let go, but because it's not only because I'm a control freak and very much involved with my authors. Well, my authors, they're not my authors, but the author I used to work with.
Yeah.
It's also because it doesn't make any sense if I don't have a text to read or to edit or an author to see every day, then the consistency of the whole thing is sort of fades away. And it's what I said at the beginning, is that you have to keep your focus on what did I do today for the authors and the text, because without the luck that we have to be the first readers and to have that confidence, we don't have a job. I mean, we're pointless. So I think it's, to me, I can't see a publisher losing tracks with the real core of our jobs.
So how have things changed in the last year? I mean, obviously 2020 has been a really difficult year for everyone. Yeah. Are you in the office at the moment, or are you at home?
Yes.
You are in the office. Okay.
Yes. But I'm the only one.
Oh, that must be so strange being in an office all on your own.
Yeah.
Has it made you think a little bit about how the company is structured, or how you do your work, and what changes you might like to see at the end of all this?
Yes, actually, there are many challenges that were enhanced or emphasized by this situation. One of them is common to, I guess, every company, but when you're in culture or creative industry, it's a stronger problem than elsewhere. Trouble is, when people are not there, what I experienced was that, first of all, you need to talk to them more. Yeah. Second, you have to find a way for the informal conversation or information to sort of spread out in the company, which is pretty hard when people are all alone or, scattered everywhere. And then you have to focus on the values and the identity and the core identity of the company, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to work on what does it mean to work at Fayard, what are we doing together, and how are we going to create something for the future. I mean, home working is great when it comes to doing what we used to do or making the wheels turn as they used to, but when you have to creatively and collectively think about the future and invent something, I think it's very, very challenging and difficult. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that I think that the what we saw is two things in publishing in France, actually, bestsellerization and polarization. And I think that we were lucky at Fayard to have a few books, among which, of course, A Promised Land by President Obama, that did tremendously well. Yeah. But it's obviously a strength, but it's also a liability, because so we had to delay or to postpone, to reschedule 50 books out of 200 this year, and 80% of the chiffre d'affaires, our growth, is going to be founded on 6 books.
Wow.
So okay. Yeah. So that's amazing, because I'm ashamed to do it, but we're going to do an amazing year at Fayard. So it's great, obviously. But at the same time, what does it say about the future? Because how do you make those 144 books which were less successful and whose weight is lighter? How do you make them work? What's the purpose of it? How does the editor, who are great editor and who build the future by publishing, new author or more difficult book, how do they get their confidence when, it's as if the book didn't exist? Yeah. And when they see that you've got massive bestseller that, garner all the attention of the company. So that's something you have to focus on. So
it's become very unbalanced in a way this year, hasn't it? Yes.
Yes.
And you were talking a little bit about polarization as well.
Yes, that's the thing which is common, I guess, to every democracy is that my fear is that we tend to a form of tribal publishing, which is the way I see it as a nonfiction editor. I think Fayard is not political driven for one side publishing house. We publish people who don't get along. We publish people we don't agree with all our author, and I think we should not. But we try and publish authors who bring something to the general conversation, a new point of view, and sometimes I think it's very, very interesting to think against yourself, and to disagree with someone makes you, makes your
to have an
brain work.
intellectual debate about the issues. Yes.
And what I see is that with the anger and the anxiety that are within the society, with the social media, with people being locked up in their bubbles, actually it seems like the global conversation, or talking, or embracing another point of view, is not very fashionable, and people are losing interest. So they try and find books that comfort their own bubble and their own point of view, and they buy books that are a statement. I'm angry and I'm buying that book because that guy is angry. And question is, first of all, do we have to publish only angry people and to give up, which is not very supportive to democracy and its future? And secondly, what with all our, consistent, balanced, sophisticated experts who think that, sensible knowledge is something that might be interesting. And we still publish them, and we keep on publishing them, but it seems like there is less interest for that kind of books, which I think is troubling, because it really undermines democracy at some point. So those might be the first threats or liabilities that I have seen.
That's going to come out of this pandemic, or has been encapsulated by the pandemic. It obviously was there anyway, but it's just been kind of crystallized in a sense.
Exactly.
And in terms of other changes you've made, what is the gender balance at the company now in terms of staff?
Well, actually, the gender balance was really bad a few years ago, because we were something like 96% of women. So I decided to try and do an affirmative action by hiring men, which might sound weird, but which was actually very, very difficult, because turns out men, because of the pretty low wages that are in the publishing in France, and because in humanities or literature studies you'll find a majority of women, of girls, and for many social and cultural reasons, young men don't seem to be that interested in publishing anymore. And so it was really weird, and it was really funny, because it reminded me of what I told you about me being appointed CEO. It's like when you interview a girl, the job is here, the girl will say, I'm there, and there is 10% of things that I'm not sure I might do well on day one, and they never talk about the pay or the money, and the job is here, and the guy says, I'm there, and I want the money to be up there, and he doesn't have a clue somehow about the job, but it's not the point. And it's just and so I kept hiring men and trying to tame their
ambitions and their
sometimes
expectations.
And I found myself in interviews saying, but will you shut up about the thing that you can't do, don't know how to do? Will you tell me what you can do? Because you obviously, giving your resume, are a very talented young woman. So please tell me what you can do. And I thought it was, interesting, because it's still a big fight. So now we've got a more balance. We've got, I guess, 12 to 15 men, And so it's a more balanced, gender balanced company, which is great. But we still are very, very, very bad on diversity, which is my next challenge. Because we're, I'm the profile type of the Fayard employee. I'm a woman, I'm 40ish, I'm white, I'm from Paris, I come from a good family. I mean, it's very, very difficult. And I think it's not only politically or morally a problem, I think it's also a business problem. And this is something that I experienced. It was my conviction, but I experienced it when publishing Becoming of the memoir of Michelle Obama, because French publishing is really hugely white, upper class white. And when we published Becoming, we saw crowds and crowds of young Black women or North African women descent, young women who suddenly found this role model, inspiring memoir.
They find a voice suddenly. It's
a voice.
Watching the crowds at her events was just so amazing, wasn't it?
I was in London and then I was in Paris, and like 2/3 of the audience were, women from very diverse background, pretty young, and the tickets were pretty expensive. And suddenly it struck me, it should have struck me earlier, but it struck me that, why should it be interested in the book we publish when most of those books just, they don't relate to her anyway. I mean, if you see the books, if you read the novels by the top 10 French novelists, you might think that everybody in France is white.
Yes.
No, really. I mean, it's not because they're racist. They're not racist. It's not because but they've got a bias that we all have, and I mean, bias are natural. Bias is not wrong or right. I mean, it's a fact. But you have to accept that fact and to try and do something about it, because otherwise, at some point, over 50 women, white women, will not be the majority. And we only think of them as the book buyers. And at some point, we'll turn out and say in I don't know, 15 years that, oh my gosh, youngsters, men, people from other backgrounds, my gosh, they don't read books. But maybe it's because we didn't think of them.
Yeah. So do you think the books need to come first and then the audience will come and then you'll get a more diverse workforce? I mean, is there
I think you have to try everything in any way. It's such a difficult, it's such an issue, and it's so difficult, and the roots are so mingled that you have to try anything. But it's because it's really complicated.
Yeah, I know British publishing is really struggling with this, how to get a more diverse workforce issue.
Yeah, but they are struggling, but they are more in advance than French publishing.
Yes, but there have been some really good initiatives and a lot of kind of thought into how you advertise. And I mean, there is the pay issue, as you've already referred to. A lot of people think, well, why should I go and work for those really low salaries when I can go and earn quite a lot of money being a dentist or
or a bankster?
Yeah, or whatever it might be. So do you see some kind of seeds of hope there? Is your publishing beginning to change? Do you find that?
Yes, we're trying. Yeah. But I mean, it's going, but it's going to take time.
Yes,
it's been, Hachette took some initiative. We've got mentoring program, we've got hiring program, we've got some editors in Fayard and in the groups who come from different backgrounds, but it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah. Still, you'll be there to see it through. I feel absolutely sure. I do hope that next year brings a kind of a gentler publishing environment when some of your more reasoned authors kind of get a chance to talk and debate, and we don't just have to hear angry voices shouting from each side of the room.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
It's been absolutely lovely to talk to you, Sophie. So thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you so much, Jo.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.